On this video, I'm going to cover the exact real estate photography equipment that I recommend in 2023 and break it down by budget. So whatever your budget is, you'll have a recommendation from me in this video. And I'm of course going to show you the exact camera gear that all of my photographers at my real estate photo business are going to be using this year. And if you know anything about me, you know that I hate overspending on gear. So I think all of my equipment recommendations are pretty budget friendly, or at least good bang for the buck. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you in this video. Now, here's the thing that is definitely true that a lot of people misunderstand. It's not about the gear, it's how you use it. I know if you've been in the photography world for any time, you've heard that phrase a ton. People repeat it over and over and over. And then those same photographers who say that turn around and blow their budget on gear. They spend so much money on gear, or they wait to get started because they don't have a piece of gear. They think that, and they'll recommend to you a really expensive piece of gear. And I think that's so silly because it really is not how this works, especially in real estate photography. It is much more about how you use the gear, not the gear you have. But of course, you have to have some type of gear. And if you're planning to make a purchase, you might as well buy the best gear that you can with the budget that you have in mind. So this is my kit.co gear kit, and you'll find this linked in the description below, but I'm going to go through these various kits and tell you a little bit about why I've put the cameras and lenses and other things that you'll need in each kit and what I think would be best based upon your budget. So if you want to spend the least amount possible and get gear that will be adequate for real estate photography, you're going to want to go straight to my real estate budget kit. This is everything that I say that you need to get started as a real estate photographer. You don't need to start with video. You don't need to start with 3D tours. You just need a camera that will allow you to take good still photos, and that's what this kit includes. Currently, we have the EOS M50 Mark II in this kit with the Canon EFM 11-22 lens. And as you can see, the Manfrotto, this is just like a cheap Manfrotto tripod. I think there are definitely more expensive tripods you can get, more expensive cameras, but I think if you're just getting started, this is about all you need. And then of course, an SD card. Now, this camera itself is a crop sensor mirrorless camera. So it is crop sensor, but that's totally fine because you can use a little bit wider lens to get that same field of view that you would on a non-crop or a full frame camera with a less wide lens. So this is a great gear kit. And here's the thing that I recommend with any of this you're buying. See if you can find it used first, because you could probably get this entire kit used for under $1,000, and I think that would be a great way to go. You'll also notice that this is the Mark II version of the M50. There's a Mark I version that we used at my photo business for a while, and it works great as well, and you're more likely to find that used, right? So try to find that first. Either one will work. And quick side note, we actually switched my entire photo business over to the EOS M50 for a year, basically just to prove a point that you don't need expensive cameras. And we ended up upgrading to what we currently use, which I'll talk about in a second, because it's a little bigger and has a little better low light performance for video. But if you're just getting started, this is an awesome setup, and I definitely recommend the M50. Moving over to the exact kit that my employees at Norman & Young, my real estate photo business, currently use, we have the EOS R as our camera body. Some of our photographers also use the EOS RP, which is a little bit cheaper version. If you're going to be shooting a lot of video, I think it's worth it to go for the EOS R, but the RP does really a good enough job, and I think ultimately it's about $1,000 difference, and I'd probably rather save the money. And so we have a mixture as we're kind of testing different camera bodies. The lens that goes on this one, or lens that we like to use, is the EF 16-35 f4. I don't think with real estate it's a good idea to waste the money on the f1.8. I mean, if you have a reason to do it, do it. But again, I'd encourage you to look at the companies that are doing this well and making the most money. And my company and a lot of the other bigger ones, they won't buy the f1.8 because we just don't think it's necessary to waste that $1,000. And again, if your goal is purely business results, I'd encourage you to model after businesses like mine. If your goal is artistic results, then you'll have to learn from somebody else. That's just my recommendation. And then this lens doesn't actually mount directly on this camera. It's a different mount type since it's a mirrorless one. So you just need to get this adapter if you're going to use this setup. There's also a 16mm prime that goes directly on this mount that you can get, but this is the setup that we're currently using. Tripod wise, we use the Slick Pro 700. It's a super beefy tripod, and I like it way better than Manfrotto. That lasts way longer, doesn't come apart. I used to think of Manfrotto as like the ultimate tripod brand, and really now I think they're just kind of cheap tripods. They don't last very long, at least in the field. So definitely like these legs. And then we currently use the Benro 3-way geared head. Again, there is a Manfrotto geared head. I think it's called like the 510 Junior or something. I don't know. It's awful. It breaks so much. We used to go through them like every few months just because we're using our cameras so much, right? Like if you buy a piece of gear that's Manfrotto and sit it in the closet, it's not going to break. And that's why I thought the brand was so good, but now I really like Benro, and I don't know if we've ever had one of these even break yet, so they're super good. Gimbal wise, for shooting video, we currently use the DJI RSC2. There's a bunch of different versions that have come out earlier and later. We just like the cheaper gimbals. I'm not a big fan of spending the money for the really expensive ones because, again, it doesn't matter, and I am in business to make money, not spend money, and so I like this gimbal. Drone, we're currently using the Mavic Air 2. Although we are testing the Mavic Minis, I like those a lot, and frankly, I think that's what we're going to go with in the future. So I really like the Mavic Mini 2. It's like $400 or $500, and you can get more batteries and stuff, but it's great. The wind resistance is totally fine. It's smaller, so while it can't maybe handle as much wind, I think it actually can, and it hasn't made a difference to us. So great drone, allow you to save another $500 there. We use quick releases on everything. That way we can switch between our tripod and our gimbal here, and so I have one of those linked. I like this one. It's super heavy duty, doesn't break easily. Over to our 360 camera that we're currently using to make 3D tours is the Insta360 1X2. Insta360 has a 1X3 now. It is, at the time of filming this, not yet compatible with Matterport, which is the 3D tour software that we use. So we use the 1X2s. We've tested a ton of 3D tour cameras, including the Ricoh Z1, which is like $1,000. Again, that's twice the price of this. I like saving money, so I go with that one, and then you'll need an SD card. So that's what my team uses. If you really want to just like blow your bank account out and you want something like really good, setup would also pretty good for headshots because it's f2.8. But again, like, I don't think you need that. I don't think that's worthwhile unless you have a very good reason or you just enjoy gear. So like me personally, I don't enjoy the gear I shoot with. Like, having nicer gear doesn't bring me anything, and so I get the most efficient gear, but I spend tons of money. Like, I love buying stuff. It's just not gear. And so this kit is if you're someone who just likes the gear. Here's where I highly encourage you to be very thoughtful. If you are trying to get started as a real estate photographer, even if you like the gear, don't wait to get your business started to get the gear that you need. I think that's a really stupid move, and oftentimes it's just because you are scared to take the next step, right? Like, being truthfully, a lot of people will have this thing that they need to do, and they'll start stacking stuff between them and that thing they need to do because ultimately they're scared of doing that thing. And so don't let yourself be fooled by saying, oh, I like gear, I'm going to save up. This only applies if you're already making money and you can justify the gear from the clients that you currently have. And like I always tell people, don't pay for your gear upgrades yourself. Get clients and let them pay for your gear upgrades. And ultimately, they'll pay for everything in your life once you build a good enough photo business. Gimbal-wise, in this set, you can use the RS2, a much more expensive gimbal, more heavy duty. I mean, again, I don't really know why you would go this route, but some people just like expensive stuff. So that's the route. If I had unlimited money to blow on a drone, and blow is the key word, I think it's a complete waste of money. The DJI Mavic 2 Pro, or whatever the latest drone that they have out, is great, but they have $5,000 drones that people are buying and using for real estate. I just think that's kind of stupid because you're going to crash it at some point. And do you really get more enjoyment of spending more money on a drone? I don't think so. I think people just sometimes think they do. But the one thing I will say is nice to have is the remote that you can see here that has the screen built in. So maybe that's a worthwhile upgrade just from a workflow perspective. You don't have to like put your phone on it every time. Camera wise, still the Insta360 1X2. If you really wanted to, you could upgrade to the Z1, but this is just as good. And everything else remains the same. Overall, I think the most important takeaway that I can give you here is it really doesn't matter when you're shooting real estate what gear you're using. I know there are a lot of videos online about people saying why this gear you need for this purpose, and most of the time I think that's just an opinion manifesting itself as someone saying you need this, and I think that's pretty silly. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I think the broader photography community is generally just not very good at business, and that's why you hear a lot of things like know your worth, and you hear a lot of people talking about being starving artists, and it's just kind of interesting. And so when I make videos, I always try to make them as practical as possible because my tagline is some photographers teach art, I teach money, and that's truly what I want to do. Is I want to help you make more money as a photographer, because I think it's a shame that most photographers don't make nearly the money that they could, just being completely honest. I think we're indoctrinated really in this industry to believe a lot of things to be true that aren't actually true. And so the way we build our businesses and the way we put everything in our lives together stems from those false beliefs and believing things to be true that aren't true, and leads a lot of photographers to be broke. And you do not have to be broke as a photographer. I think there is more opportunity than ever in the photography world to make a ton of money doing this, because everything we do on a daily basis revolves around something created digitally. When you're sitting here scrolling on your phone, right? That's all stuff created with a camera. And so if you're smart and you don't think of the industry changing as a bad thing, and instead you look how you can take advantage of it, there is so much opportunity. If you're watching this video, you obviously are interested in shooting real estate. I think real estate is a great way to take advantage of that, right? Because the way homes are sold has completely changed, and people now sell their homes, and real estate agents, more importantly, position those homes online first using photos, because they know that when they post a listing online, that's how they get clients. We as consumers, when we buy a house, we go to the internet first, we look at realtor.com or Zillow and Trulia, and we find a house we like based upon the pictures, and then we call the agent. And that's why I love real estate photography. And that's why I say things like, I think there is a ton of opportunity in the general photography community for photographers that are willing to be smart and practical and look where the demand actually is and go to satisfy that. So that being said, check out my full gear kit linked below. And if you haven't yet, there's also a link to sign up to my real estate photography workshop that will continue the practical advice by showing you the 5-step process that I recommend you take if you are just getting into real estate photography to get your first few clients and really get your business off the ground, because that's what I'm all about, is helping you create an awesome business, doing something that you love, because life is simply too short not to do that. That's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.